All right, well, welcome everybody. Welcome back to our live SQL in the City today. Tom, how you doing?
Very well. I've really enjoyed it so far today.
You're going to be here all day, you think? You're going to make
let's
it?
hope so. Let's hope I make it through.
So we're going to try to present together. If Tom runs away and I end up doing the rest of it, it's because he's expecting a baby any minute.
Could be any time.
Any time now. So we were worried about yesterday, but we made it. So
it's getting closer.
It's getting closer. So we're hoping we'll get through there. Well, welcome to the automated DBA automated deployment versus the manual DBA. I'm going to be the manual DBA today. There's my automated friend.
I get tools.
He gets tools. So I don't get any tools, right? Tom has crippled my virtual machine. So we're going to see if I can actually deploy changes in an efficient fashion, right? Do a good job, as good a job as you or better, perhaps.
Well, but we'll see. You've been doing this a while, right?
I've been doing this a while, and actually doing it a long time. So my name is Steve Jones, and I have been a DBA for a long time. So I started working with SQL Server, not my very first job, but soon after university in 1991. I started my first SQL Server instance was version 4.2 on OS2 of all things. Do you know what OS2 is?
I'm not familiar with that one. Sorry.
At one point, that was an operating system from IBM, and since then I've worked through all the versions of 2016 and a variety of different companies, some big companies, some small companies, different industries across the years, and I've been a developer, a DBA, a manager, different things. Right now I run SQL Server Central, and that's been my job for about 10 years now, full-time. I founded that site with a few partners and then run it. We try to help you get better at SQL Server every day.
I do know that.
You do know that,
I do know that.
So we send out a newsletter every day with new articles, new information. And then I work for Redgate as well with Tom. I'm an evangelist for Redgate, so I travel around speaking and talking about Redgate tools and SQL Server together. All my contact information is on the screen, so if you'd like to get a hold of me, please feel free to contact me. And then, Tom, I'll let you talk about yourself a little.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Tom Austin. I'm a pre-sales engineer here at Redgate Software. And I guess I don't come with quite the same level of experience.
You're not as old as I am, right?
Well, a little young. But I have worked with Redgate's tools back since 2008 when I joined Redgate. And part of my role is to really help people to get the most from their tools. It's part of my DLM instructor role, and also as a pre-sales engineer, we go and visit customers. So with tools today, I think I'm in with a chance.
I think you are too. I've used the Redgate tools a lot too, so I'll be stumbling a little because I'm not used to going without.
Okay.
All right, so rather than talk about a bunch of stuff in slides, let's jump in and see how things work. So
good luck.
All right, we'll see. So we've got similar environments today. Both Tom and I have different virtual machines. I don't have any tools, as you can see. I don't have anything added in here, so I don't get prompt, I don't get source control, I don't get any of that stuff. But I want to show you the kind of the setup for the environment so that you'll be aware of what we're doing. Now, both Tom and I have a development database. In this case, mine is named SimpleTalk Dev Steve, and this is where I'll do my work. It could be simulating my laptop, a development server, anything like that. That's my development database. Now, typically, I would have other instances of SQL Server where I would deploy code. For example, the testing database. We're going to just use development, testing, and acceptance today. So once I get done building in my development environment, I'll deploy it to my testing environment. And then we'll go up to this acceptance environment. And this will be the place that simulates production, where I want to do my last test before we actually push this code live. So we're going to go from dev to test to acceptance today. And we'll see how it goes. Now, I've got some code here because you don't want to watch me type all this code. Let me grab some code and stick it in here. And then let's look at this. So the first thing I want to do is obviously work in development because I don't want to be developing in production, right? We don't want to do that. None of us do. So I'm going to create a little stored procedure here. Nothing magic about it, just something simple that we can put together. I'll execute that. Then, of course, I want to make sure my code works, right? I'm a developer, and so I want to test it. So I'll insert a row into that table, and I need to do something. I've got to type it. Oh, I see what it is. Notepad has failed me again. Most of us good developers use Notepad extensively, or Sublime or Notepad++, something like that. All right, there we go, fixing code on the fly. Let's see if that appears from my stored procedure. And it does. This row right here is the one I just added, this first one. So my code works so far. And then the other thing I want to do as part of this development cycle is I need to insert some static data. And static data or reference data is that information that needs to be the same in development as it's in production. So the list of postal codes, male, female, status codes, cities, things that you want to be the same that we use as lookup data, reference data. I want to make sure I somehow can deploy that along with all the other code I write. So I'm going to insert a row of reference data, and then I'm going to attempt to verify that's there, because I don't get, since Tom has crippled my thing, I don't get prompt here. I have native IntelliSense though, so we look here and we can see I've got that row of data there. So I've got my stuff built. I'm going to close this window because I'm done developing for the day, and I'm going to let Tom take over and see if he can do his work. All right?
Excellent. You really miss SQL prompt.
I do.
I really do.
SQL prompt is amazing.
Okay, so I'm going to make exactly the same changes. So the first thing I'm going to do is switch over into my copy of the VM,
Yes,
which is
you're somewhere
outside
else.
of here. And there we go. Okay, so we can see already my desktop's slightly different because I've got a whole bunch of Redgate tools installed from the SQL Toolbelt. And one of those tools that I've got installed, Steve, is SQL Source Control, which we saw in the previous session. And so what this is going to allow me to do is make those exact same changes as you made, but I'm actually going to store them in our source control repository. So first of all, let me...
The thing is colored different too.
It is colored different, and that's SQL Prompt once again. So this little feature of SQL Prompt allows me to make sure that I'm working in the right environment when I execute my queries. So here, because I'm targeting a development environment, I've got a nice green query window, and that makes me feel safe and secure. But if I were to change this and accidentally target maybe our production database,
Look, it's red now.
and it goes red. Now I don't feel so secure.
That's
now
right.
now I'm scared.
Got to be really careful.
Okay. So let's head on into the development environment, and using a SQL prompt snippet, I'm going to pull up my code to make those exact same changes. So first of all, at the top here, I'm going to be creating that get latest blog stored procedure, and then I'm going to be inserting that row into our RSS feeds table as well. So let's execute that change. And now to commit this to source control, a simple right click on the database and choose commit changes to source control. And because, like we saw in the earlier session today, I've actually already marked my tables as static data tables where appropriate, and you can do that other SQL source control tasks, link or unlink static data, and we can see here that my country codes table and RSS feeds have got the little check in the box saying that any data changes here need to be included in the source control repository as well. The tool has actually picked up on both that new stored procedure, get latest blogs, and that new added row in the RSS feeds table. So for me, all I have to do is add my comment and click commit. And that's it.
And that's
I'm done.
All right. I think I did pretty good. Maybe I'm a little slower. So let's go on and deploy my code. So let's go back to my VM. Now I come back here a few days later, I want to deploy this code. So I want to take it from development and move it to testing. And to do that, let's see, let's switch this to the testing database because I want to work in this testing database. And I don't have any colors on mine. Well, I guess it's yellow. That's kind of testing, right? So let me find that code. Well, I know I need a store procedure. It's on my list of the changes I need to deploy. Management Studio makes it easy for me, so I can right-click this and I can script this as a create, and we'll drop it in a new window. And it changed my database, so let's fix that. And then I can't script out an individual row of data, but I can do an insert. So if I come up to that table and I right-click this thing, and Management Studio wakes up, let's see, there we are. We will script this as an insert. I'm going to send it to the clipboard, and then I'm going to paste it in here. Now you'll notice that in this, let me zoom in a little bit, this is a parameterized snippet that went in there. So if I Control-Shift-M, I can put in that data, and because I'm an experienced developer, I know exactly what data I put in there, and say OK. Now I can run this, and oops, I get an error. Oh, there's already an object there. You know what happened when I scripted this? It put the database name into the code. So let's get rid of that. Now let's change our database back. Deployments always have little hiccups, right? I think once in a while something will go wrong. And look through this code, and I don't want to do that. So now let's execute it. Things should have worked. If I were to run this, I assume in testing it works. And I'll look at, since I don't have prompt, I'm going to type this again. That seems to have worked. Let's comment this out. And let's save this code as SQL in city. That'll be my deployment script that I want to send off to my acceptance environment. Now, we're a little short of time, so let's assume QA has a little bit of time here. You know, a day passes or 2 days pass. We're going to deploy this to acceptance now, so let's change databases. Let's open up that script. And we got to find that script because we have to know where it is, but we do a good job of keeping track of that. There it is. And that looks good. Let's execute it. And I think I've deployed my code. I think that looks pretty good, Tom. All right. So let's see how you deploy your code.
It's there.
To your environments.
Okay.
Are you sure?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me compliment you on what you did there with the folder.
That was good,
That's
right?
wonderful, yeah. We'll take this script, save it in a folder. It'll be safe.
It's safe.
Fine there.
Right? We back this folder.
Who needs source control, hey? Okay, so in my case, I'm going to switch back over into my VM. And the first thing I want to show you really is...
Is it there? Should we go to testing? You think it's there?
Do I think it's there already?
Yeah.
Let's have a look. So let's take a look at our stored procedures in testing. And
it's there.
There we have it. Get latest blogs. Should we check the data?
Yeah. Did you fake this? Or
No. I'll show you what went on in just a second. So let's take a look at the RSS feeds. And select those top 1,000 rows. And there you can see the new row data as well.
Right. So what happened?
So it's already in our testing environment. And the reason that it's already in our testing environment is because actually what I've configured in the background here is an automated build process that runs every time we make a commit to source control. And I can actually show you this. I can let you see exactly what's going on as part of this process. So here, today I'm using TeamCity. You don't have to use TeamCity. You could use TFS or Bamboo or pretty much anything you want to work with. But we've defined this automated build process that's triggered by those commits to source control. So you can see here the trigger. That launches based upon a VCS commit, and the whole process kicks off. Now, once the process is kicked off, I've got a couple of steps. Now, I don't want to show you too much detail here at the minute, maybe later.
Okay.
But suffice to say, what we're doing is we're building our database code, we're testing it, and then we're deploying it to the next environment up the chain. So here, as part of this next step, web application and database deploy, I'm actually pushing those changes from the development database through to our integration database, our testing database, and nearly to our acceptance environment. So if we take a look here in my release management tool, again, I'm using Octopus Deploy, but you could use a release management tool of your choice. We can see that the version numbers have incremented up to version 0.68 here, and we've got this little eye icon for our acceptance environment. And what that means is it's ready to deploy to acceptance, but it's not yet. It's waiting for me to review it. So what I can do is click on this icon, and here you'll see we've got halfway through this process pretty much. We're up to step 4. Step 4 is that review database deployment resources. And this gives me the opportunity to actually take a look at the resources that are going to be used to carry out this deployment before I complete the deployment to my acceptance environment.
Okay.
So over here on the right-hand side in the artifacts, you can see I've got this changes.html file. I can open this up, and this will tell me exactly what's different between my desired state and the current state of acceptance. So our new get latest blog stored procedure and that RSS feeds row that we added in there. I can see any warnings that the tool's picked up on which we might want to consider before completing this deployment. Okay. And I can even actually see the deployment script. So I can see the exact SQL code that's going to run to take care of this deployment. But I didn't write this.
You didn't write it all, right? This was automated and built for you.
This was all done for me. All I need to do is say, yeah, it looks pretty good.
Does it look good? I think it looks pretty good.
It looks pretty good. It looks very similar to what you wrote.
So how do you deploy it then?
So if we come back into our release management tool, I'm just going to assign this approval to me. If there were other members of the team that could approve it, then we could assign this out to somebody else to review. And I'm going to add my approval comment, so something simple like approved, and click proceed. And now that will take that code and deploy it into our acceptance environment, just like it did for integration and testing.
It wasn't that much harder than what I did, right?
Well, it was pretty straightforward, I think. In fact, Steve, it was a pretty straightforward change. I was hoping you were going to give us something a little bit more challenging.
All right, so we've got 15 minutes left. Let's see if we can do something a little more complex. So while this is deploying, and actually let me pop over here real quick because I bet you it's not there yet. Can I catch it? Nope, too late. It's already there. All right. So let me go back to my environment. Let's do a more complex change. So I'll switch back to my development database right here. Make sure I'm in the right one because I don't have any colors. And I've got another piece of code here that's a little more complex. Now this is a change that sometimes worries DBAs. You're getting a little nervous when you see this. So in this contacts table, we actually have this full name column. And actually I'll put the star on the end so we can see everything. And that way we can look at this. And here we've got a full name. It's a common thing, we build in a database, we just put the name in there, right? And we just leave it there. But later on we realize we want to split out that name into the various components. We might have a first name and then a last name or surname, might do middle name, might do, you know, your junior or senior at the end, or your Mr. or Mrs. or Ms. on the beginning. In this case, what we want to do is we're going to add first name and last name. We're going to split that data out into a new column. So I'll go ahead and add those columns. And then I've got a piece of data movement here. This update statement is going to separate out the names, put them in the new columns, and then we'll just check that they're split appropriately. If we look at the code, we see that the name in the first column is split in the next two columns to first name and last name. Very simple data movement. In the real world, it might be more complex to handle middle names, or McDonald or Van Dyke or other types of surnames that are in there. Our whole application, though, may not change at once. We may still need that full name column and then first and last name. So we're actually going to build a trigger here. So we've got a table change, data movement, and a trigger to keep those things up to date. Let's test our code. I've got an insert statement here that's going to add a row with my name in it. And I'm going to update Grant's row. So we'll do a couple things there, and then we're going to check to make sure that that code actually still works. And so it helps if I don't highlight the comment. But now we can see that Grant's name has changed and it was split out appropriately, and then my name is there as well. So I've got this code. In the interest of time, let me deploy this again. So to deploy it, I would probably save this, right, as a new type of save. So come on, where's my VM? Maybe I'll just deploy it if it doesn't want to save. All right, we'll go to test and we'll say, let's run this piece of code. And we need to move data, so let's run this piece of code. And then one last piece of code here. That looks good, that's deployed. And while the QA people are looking at it, I'm going to redeploy a new change again because I'm confident that my code works. I don't really make mistakes in my code, not when I'm deploying stuff, right? Not too often.
No, never.
All right, I think my stuff's all deployed. If I were to go to acceptance, I think I'll just check the context table and it should be there, that we see those columns, and they are here. So they're deployed. All right, Tom, let's see you deploy that same code.
So I think I see what you're doing here. So last time when we made that data change, I already had SQL source control set to source control the static data from that table. But in this case, that data's outside of my static data.
We don't want it the same, right, in development direction. So.
And it's actually a data migration because we're taking it from one column, we're going to split it out.
Yes.
So I see what you're trying to do. That's a bit more challenging. I'll give you that.
So let's see what you can do.
Okay. So back here in my copy of the VM, I've got my colors, so I know I'm in the right one. What I can do here is select the right database for me to make the change in and open a new query window. And now I'm going to paste in, again, using a SQL prompt snippet, the code to make the exact same change that you made. So here we have the alteration of the contacts table to add that first name and last name column. We're then going to move the data, so split the full name into that first name and last name column that we just created, and then I'm going to add my trigger as well. So exactly the same process as before. I'm going to execute. Oh, I've got a little pop-up from SQL Prompt. SQL Prompt is worried for me, so it's recognized that I'm about to run an update, without a where clause, which a lot of times is not the right thing. I mean, wouldn't that have saved you a few times before?
Many times in my career.
So in this case, it's fine though. I know that that is what I want to do, so I'm going to choose to execute that anyway. And now the changes have been made to my development database. So just like before again, I'm going to right click on the database and choose commit changes to source control. But this is where I'm going to change the way that I do things slightly.
Okay, because I don't see data movement here at the bottom.
No. So SQL Source Control has picked up on the schema change for me, so the additional 2 columns and that new trigger,
Right.
but it's unaware of the data change because
Right.
that's not a structural difference in the database compared to what's in the source control repository.
Right.
So instead of just doing a normal commit, instead I'm going to use what we call migrations. And this allows me to actually supply some customized change script that gets stored in the source control repository alongside the state information and tied together so that whenever we need to deploy this code out, it knows that there's this customized piece of deployment code there and available for it to use as part of the process.
Okay.
So in this case, we're going to replace those changes, all of the changes that we made to the contacts table, and ask it to generate a script. We're going to throw away this script and replace it with the exact code that I used to make the change in development earlier. So this is that same snippet, creating the columns, splitting the data, and then adding the trigger.
And then I see at the top the name is that's editable, right? So we can change that.
Yeah, so we can make this something a bit more meaningful than covers changes for contacts table. We can put something in here like splitting name column. And then we know what this migration script's for. We know what the purpose of it is.
Okay.
So if I now hit save and close, then you'll see that on the commit changes tab, we now have this migration script listed, which is referencing those changes that we made to the contacts table.
So both of these aren't going to run just the migration script, right?
That's right. So when it comes to deploy this change out, it's going to recognize that there's an associated migration script. And if there's a whole bunch of other changes that we've made, it will automatically create the code for that and then substitute in the customized code in place of dynamically generating the deployment script for this particular change.
All right, sounds good. So let's commit that.
So we'll add our comment and click commit.
And now this is going to automatically deploy again, just like the last change.
Just like before. So it'll automatically go to our integration and testing environments.
Okay.
Then it will prepare the resources for us for acceptance and then wait for us to approve those before it gets deployed out.
Can we see this happening now?
Yeah, sure. Let's switch over and take a look at our automated build process. So you just saw it kick off there.
Yeah.
And now let's take a look inside of these steps and see exactly what's going on. So if we open up this database build and test task, you can see this is made up of 2 build steps, a Redgate DLM automation build and a Redgate DLM automation test. Now the first task is all about validating this schema that's in the source control repository. So much like with an application, we would take all of the individual files from the repository and make sure that we can push them all back together to form an application, compile an application. Here, we're doing the exact same with the database. We take those individual files from source control and make sure that we can put them back together to form a database.
And so we know how to do tables before indexes and views and all that.
Exactly.
Okay.
And if you've got any objects in there that kind of don't make sense, that reference things that don't exist, then it's going to fail this step. And so therefore, you're going to be aware of the fact that you've got some syntax errors in there, or you've got some problems with the way that your objects are relating to one another.
Okay, that makes sense.
So the output of this step is a package, a NuGet package, and that ultimately becomes our deployment artifact later on. So I'll show you that as an artifact to the build in just a second. But first of all, I want to talk about this DLM automation test step. Now, one of the things I noticed when you were doing your deployment is you kept checking.
Yep.
Does this work?
Got to test.
Is this doing what it's meant to be doing? And I felt a little bit like I was cheating you because I wasn't doing any of this testing, and that's not really right. But actually, what I am doing is running these automated tests as part of the process. Okay. And so in here, what we can do is add a whole bunch of database unit tests that covers all of those things that you were checking, and run them automatically as part of the build.
Those are probably hard to write and run though, right?
No, it doesn't have to be. So if we come into SQL Server Management Studio, you can see we've actually got this component of the SQL Toolbelt called SQL Test. And the testing framework in the background is the T-SQL-T framework. And what this tool allows you to do is very easily create, manage, and run your unit tests from within SSMS. But these are the exact same tests that are being run as part of the automated build.
Okay. Good.
So let's take a look and see how we are getting on with our automated deployment process. We are just preparing the resources to deploy to acceptance at the moment.
So it's already deployed to 2 environments, right? Because it's 69, not 68 here.
Correct, yep. So integration and testing are up to date. And we can see that this is actually just working through that process of producing those database update resources ready for us to review them. Now, the technology in the background is actually a collection of PowerShell commandlets that we provide with the Redgate SQL Toolbelt, but we actually make available a whole bunch of different plugins so that you can use it with common and popular continuous integration and release management tools like Octopus Deploy and TeamCity.
Okay.
So here it's produced those resources for us, just like before. We can take a look at the changes.html file, and here we'll see.
Oh, so you've got get latest blogs and RSS feeds. That was from before.
That was from before. Now the reason that this has happened is because last time we only deployed to acceptance. We never went all the way to production.
Ah, okay.
And so as part of my automated deployment process here, if you take a look, what you'll see is that when we deploy to our acceptance environment, we refresh it from our production environment. And that means we can almost run it as like a test deployment to production.
So I can do a restore or something that mimics it.
Exactly right. And then you're producing those update resources based upon your current production state.
I see.
So here, when we come back to this deployment, and we take a look at the changes, we've got those changes from last time which haven't yet reached production, and we've got our additional change to our contacts table where we've got those new columns and that new stored procedure, and trigger, sorry. And here as well, if we take a look at the deployment script, there's our data change code.
There it is.
So it's been included as part of this deployment.
Okay.
So to actually push this out, all I need to do is assign this to me.
And approve it again.
Approve it again. Do you want to do the honors, Steve?
Sure.
Go on, click the button.
All right. So this is, I think, a little bit easier than me switching databases and deploying that code. Feels a little smoother to me. And one of the nice things here, I assume when this is done, when I deploy it to production, I just click another button and it goes, right? The same code goes.
You do. What's really nice actually about the process that we've defined here, and we can talk to you about how to set up your process if you'd like some assistance with that, is that actually when we produce that upgrade script for acceptance, which is a copy of production, we take a snapshot of that target environment state. So before we execute the upgrade script, we can check to make sure that acceptance is still in the same state and hasn't drifted, and make sure that the upgrade script's still appropriate. And therefore, when we come to deploy to production, we can run that same check to make sure production is still as it was, and use exactly the same upgrade script. And if you start with the same state, use the same script, you expect the same outcome.
All right. So I've deployed to production. I see here many less steps, right? So we just grab the package, we do that check you mentioned, and then we just push it out. But we're also deploying a web application here, right? Step 6, we've got application code with our database code.
Yeah, and that's part of the flexibility of tools like Octopus Deploy. It allows you to define as part of your process many different components that can be deployed as a single release.
Excellent. So database code, application code, everything going together. All right, we're winding down, and let me just show you kind of what happened here. So if we look at this software development pipeline, we're going from development over on your right all the way to production on your left. Both Tom and I have similar environments, but we both have to write this code and store it in a database somehow and make sure it works, right? We're developers and we've got to do that.
Have to write the code.
And then from there I kind of stop, but Tom continues forward and he commits to version control so that he has track of every version of that code all the time, right? Whereas I've got to put it in folders or something, or
it's a full audit trail, see who changed it, why they changed it.
And then Tom has a CI process using TeamCity, in this case, that will verify the code, does the build-in test for you and produces an output package, right?
Yeah.
And you don't have to use TeamCity, you could use TFS or Bamboo or Jenkins or Hudson or Cruise Control or whatever.
That's right, anything you want. All of the components that we've used today are just an example.
All right, and then from there, the script gets kind of compiled automatically for Tom, whereas I have to kind of put that back together myself, make sure I've got the right set of code to deploy to testing or QA or acceptance or anywhere else. And then of course Tom has an automated deployment and I've got kind of a manual one. All right, well, we find our customers, right? You work with a lot of customers.
I do.
They find that when they do this, they can release those changes. They certainly can do it faster, but you don't have to, right?
You don't have to. It's about giving you the flexibility, the ability to choose how often you release. Don't be held back.
All right. So here's a great quote from the CTO of one of our customers. We think you will find that this is pretty easy. You know, I did a pretty good job as Manual DBA, but
You did.
Tom made it look really easy with SQL source control and DLM automation. Please feel free to download it, give it a try. And we've got hands-on labs as well. So redgate.com/HOL, you can actually connect to your own virtual machine just like the ones that Tom and I are using. You'll have the tools, unlike mine, because you deleted mine. But you'll have the tools in there, and then there's walkthroughs that will help you to go through the same process we did, to try SQL source control, commit your changes,
That's
automatically
right. It's
deploy
all
it.
on there.
And it's configured so you don't have to do the build and everything else. All right, well, next up, we've got something I can't read. Redgate helps with, the database deployment process that's coming up next. And then if you stick around right after that, Tom, you're doing your SQL Toolbelt tips.
I am, yeah. Top 20 Toolbelt tips.
He's got some great tips. I learned a few things by watching him yesterday, so come check that out. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. Thanks a lot, Tom.
Thank you.
Good luck with the child.
Thank you.
Guys, have a great day at SQL in the City.
Take care. Bye-bye.